Okay. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. So, with that, first item on agenda, newcomers. We have Victor. Who are you? Hi, welcome.
Hey guys, yeah, I am definitely new to the whole SBOM world. Got myself involved through some of the CISA stuff. So I joined one of the CISA projects, helping working on defining the real life implementation of SBOMs. So taking the theory, run the framing documents, and turn them into a real project, a real usable open source GitHub projects. Serial entrepreneur, done a few startups before, currently working on a new project called Spomify, where I try to kind of solve similar to what the Exchange API is trying to solve for. So hopefully be an active participant in adopting the Transparency Exchange API as part of the service offering we're doing. So that's part of the reason why I want to join, keep my finger on the pulse, see what's going on, and hopefully, help with raising awareness to this.
Beautiful. I can add, as Victor is modest, that I listened the other day to the audio version of your podcast with Alan Freeman.
Oh, yes.
That was really, really good conversation to listen to. So if you haven't, go and listen. It's available. I can put chat in it. Where possible. Yeah.
Nerding out with Victor is.
Yeah, nerding out with Victor. Valerio, hello. Do you want to say anything? You're muted. No? Okay. Let's move on. Next item on the agenda is information from TC54. Do we have anything to add there on the core group?
No, I think the only thing I would like to add maybe is that we have the official TG1 calls actually scheduled now. So those are on the OWASP software supply chain community calendar. They are open to ECMA members and to as a temporary basis to observers and to invited experts.
For those of you that are new, we're trying to take all our work into ECMA. We've done that already with CycloneDX core spec. But the cool part of the work, the fun part, is happening in the community work groups that we have now. In the working groups within ECMA, the TG1, there will be standardization, sorting out Oxford commas, English versus American, and other things. But we won't change the content of the standards documents in that work. So it's more standardization formats and other things that is discussed there. And we're looking for companies that are ECMA members to join us.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Yeah, all the great work, the majority of the work actually happens in the community. The TC as well as the TGs are typically for standards geeks. So if you want to geek out on standards and all that sort of thing, then that's where you can hang out. But yeah, the specification itself is community based. What we did, just so everyone kind of knows, is OWASP and ECMA worked very, very closely together. What we realized is that if you look at a typical standards body, it takes a good 3, 4, 5 years to create a standard. And then you look over at TC39, which is JavaScript. They have a standard every single year. How are they able to do that? Well, we basically reverse engineered essentially a lot of their processes and came up with a working model jointly between ECMA and OWASP, came up with a working model on how we can actually innovate quickly and have all the requirements, all the governance necessary to, have an international standard. And the model that we came up with is what's in place for TC54. It's what CycloneDX has gone through. It is what all other specifications, including package URL, VERS, the Transparency Exchange API, etc. It's what all other specifications will go through. It's also serving as a model for other TCs within ECMA. There is a TC55 in development, has nothing to do with supply chain. They're basically taking our model and using that as a building block for their own. So what we've jointly developed between OWASP and ECMA, we are essentially customer zero. We're dog fooding our own thing, but it's a model for all future community-based industry standards.
Yep. Okay, thank you. If anyone has questions, just shout out, but I think we're going through this. We also started to work on the package URLs. So if you're interested in that, join the group on the Slack, the package URL, and you'll get all the details about that group. But Philippe Ombredam is leading that group. And I found bugs in package URL documentation yesterday evening, based on the TEI work I will explain more about. Over to next topic. I'm trying to move fast so we can go to the cool stuff. KoalaCon, I think we agreed. I didn't take proper notes. I think we agreed on Monday, September 30th, or did we take October last week, 2 weeks ago?
I'd have to watch the recording. I don't remember what we settled on.
Oh, right. We have the recording. Okay.
Yes.
I assigned myself to coordinate the program and assigned Steve to get us access to the OWASP Zoom and both of us to do marketing and the whole team. But for those of you who haven't heard, we're jokingly saying KoalaCon, but we need to reach out to implementers of SBOM platforms, right? And other transparency platforms. So we're planning to have a 2-hour virtual conference where we explain what we're doing. We're bringing up implementers, especially dependency track, and try to get them aboard and understand how this will affect them. It's going to be a Zoom meeting using OWASP accounts. We're going to record it to publish on YouTube, and most people will probably look at that. We have an idea on talks. This is another Google Docs document, Victor and Valerio. I can send a link later on.
Please do.
I've written some text for the invitation here with some keywords. Please look at that and review it so we'll get it right. The date here is all wrong, but I think this text may work, but please give your feedback. I know, Mark, you're very good at correcting my Swinglish into proper English. So please do. Okay, any questions, ideas?
Are the CFP process done, or is that is it locked in, or is there a formal CFP process, or how's that looking?
The formal CFP process is here and now. So if you have ideas, contact me later and we'll chat about it. Okay.
Perfect.
We will have to figure out if we want like a registration thing for it, or how we want people to sign up, or that sort of thing. So I mean, we can do it open like what we do on this call, or we can have like a formal sign up and capture information. We'll have to figure that out, but we can do that offline.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be good to have basis of a mailing list so we can reach out when we release 1.0 or 0.9 for review or something. I think that they're having a registration maybe a good thing for the future.
Mm.
Okay. Other things then, ESPON Marama in Denver is a virtual or in-person conference organized by CISA. We tried hard to push in there, and we got 10 minutes. I know Anthony Harrison and Steve Springett is going. Am I right, Steve?
Yeah, I might not go.
Okay.
Yeah, it's getting really, really close to Global AppSec, which is the end of September. And based on everybody's travel that they did to Black Hat and DEF CON, everybody I know ended up with COVID. So I don't want to end up getting COVID at this event and unable to go to AppSec Global. So I may just do virtual this year.
Yeah, I'll be do virtual. But Alan promised us a 10-minute talking slot to explain Koala briefly. He was very interested and gave it. It was me, Anthony Harrison, who can't, unfortunately, is scheduled for other things but at this time slot. But he's very active off list. So either Anthony on site or me remote, depending on if technology works. So
I'm presenting remotely, so I hope so.
Yeah, exactly. I was sitting in my cottage over mobile networks out in Roslagen, Victor. So and when we had the meeting with Alan just began, a hellstorm broke loose. It was very noisy. I think that got him worried. We haven't got Dimitri here, so we'll continue discussing CISA sharing SBOM working group when he's back. IETF SCIT, we had another meeting the other day. They have the regular community meeting. It wasn't a specific team meeting. But since they didn't have an agenda, I kind of took over to discuss digital signatures and artifacts. So we had a very good discussion, and we're going to continue that and see where we end up. To have a pull request on that topic in our document repository. I mailed Kate Stewart today with a reminder. I would like to be a part of an SPDX community meeting to present our work, or if someone else wants to present. So we'll see what happens there. Okay. Any other communities we should reach out to or try to invade? Guerrilla work is good. We need to reach out.
Can't think of anything. I mean, we've got the use cases for VEX. They're going to apply. Even the use cases for SBOM are going to be format agnostic. So, you know, the SPDX, OpenVex, Cyclone, those are implementation details, which this group has nothing to do with. So,
no, but the people who follow those groups are implementers. And also, especially SPDX needs to be aware that we're agnostic, and we
that's fine. I think you know, I don't want to. I don't think there's a ton of value going after all the different formats that we want to support.
No.
I think there is a ton of value in going after different types of industries and applications that might have a desire to integrate. For example, if we know of a really great application that's used in enterprise IT for procurement, for example, well, that would be a pretty good use case for being able to get these types of artifacts during the procurement process, right? So those types of groups I would love to reach out to. I just don't have a list of what those, vendors or projects or whatever are.
Well, we have to be a bit clever with that, but yeah.
Is there a potential collaboration with Secure by Design? Because I know that's some work they're done.
Yes.
There's a meeting an hour, I think, is the implementation call with the Secure by Design. But that might be a good hook in there as well.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, and we discussed after we released the first version of the spec that it's possible to implement, that we, in conjunction with some other event, have a hackathon, a T hackathon, so that server and client implementations can test and see how it works, right? So that's the idea. Okay, good. Let's go into other things. I have created a small library. I think I mentioned that on the chat. No, that's not it. Sorry. Where did that go? Ah, computers are strange. It opened on another screen, so you don't see it. Here. What? Repositories, tape parser. I just wanted to make sure that our ideas about the URN actually works with package URLs and other things. So I wrote a Python library where I implemented parsing of TACE. So I checked that it's a proper URN syntax, and for package URLs, I checked that it's a proper package URL syntax. And I found that the package URL project's Python implementation didn't accept all the examples that was on the web page, because I took all the examples here, all the Perls, and created URNs of them. And 2 of them didn't work, wasn't accepted for CPAN. So we had a discussion in the bug tracker with the CPAN people, and I think we can solve that. But the interesting part here, apart from the actual implementation, is the tests, and I'm gonna enhance them as well. So please go take a look and see if you can prove me wrong. But otherwise, I think the URN idea seems to work well. I also updated the documentation here in our repository under discovery with syntax for package URL TI type, SWID TI type, a hash TI type, and a UID. So you can see that I'm trying to add several types, and it's up to the manufacturer to define these. But we have to show that we're compatible with what's out there and used. And I haven't captured all the other types, but
yeah, we should probably start just as maybe a sub type of thing, start working on some of the GS1s. That's going to be really, really important, like capturing GMN and G10 and some of these other things for device makers or medical device or whatever.
Now we have a library, and maybe at some point we should move that into the CycloneDX repository, but it's at least we can have some code prove that the parsing works and the syntax works. And I started experimenting with DNS lookups and found out that my own DNS server is too old. So I need to fix that in order to be able to add some example zones with URI records.
It's just as sorry, as a newcomer here, is the idea that you can scan a barcode, essentially EAN or GS1 format, and that's gonna basically map the discovery towards SBOM. Is that the concept?
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. Basically, we're gonna embed that. Let me see.
It'll also, I think, you know, the OWASP, not the OWASP Foundation, but the at the time, the SBOM forum, before it was part of OWASP, they published a paper. The intended audience of that paper was the folks at the NVD, and the gist of the paper was, you guys need to be able to support Perl and a couple different GS1 standards. Otherwise, you guys are going to be irrelevant in 5 years.
Right.
So yeah, but essentially, if we can support barcodes for the exchange of documents, and then eventually, if the NVD ever gets around to supporting that for vulnerabilities, all these dots will be connected, which would be amazing.
So basically, Victor, to scroll back a bit, we have an identifier, which is what I'm talking about, the URN, that could be delivered as a barcode or a QR code or somewhere, right? And that should be resolvable to a website by various means. This presentation is on our GitHub repository on the presentations. If you want.
Okay, let me review it after.
Yeah.
The reason why I raised that question was because that ties very nicely into Secure by Design. Because I'm going through that process for one of my companies right now, and we have physical boxes, and they do have barcodes. That anything that sells over the counter, it would be interesting to repurpose that barcode for a SBOM lookup as well. So I would be super curious about doing the implementation of that at some point.
Cool.
Yeah, so I would love to be able to see that, because that's going to be one of the really interesting use cases, because that barcode, right? That's going to tie to a device model, right?
Yeah.
And the software on that model is typically going to be the same.
Yeah.
The hardware, however, might actually be different between different boxes with the same, UPC thing, right? Because it's very, very common for manufacturers to change out suppliers or replace a part because of supply chain issues in the same model, right?
Yeah.
So this is going to be a really good exercise on, did we design it in a way where our hardware, counterparts can actually make use of this? This is going to be a really interesting exercise.
Yeah, because we are building SBOMs. Well, we are in the process of building SBOMs for our boxes right now and our products right now. So this is kind of missing link between the two, and it will be an interesting use case to build that out, both for Secure by Design, they are keen for use cases, and leveraging this as an angle as well. I need to do some more research and understand for the flow, but at face value, it seems like something that I would be super keen on exploring.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, that's one of the things that I think we recommended a while back, is just to kind of have a sequence diagram. Has work started on that or no? Is that still kind of a to-do?
Really, we have to look through the presentations, but I haven't got a formal. We probably need to do that, but we had some discussions about the object model and collections coming up, so I wanted to go through that a bit again. We had a meeting, but very few participated. It was me, Pavel, and Anthony, right, Pavel? Wasn't it? The three of us?
Yes, only three of us, yes.
Yeah. But I think that we still have something, maybe not the proper names, but we had a product index, which is basically the box. And the box can contain many components, but we didn't want to use the word component because that means something else within the actual SBOM. So we call them leaves right now, tea leaves. And for each tea leaf, we have different versions. And for each version, we have a set of collections. And we had a discussion about that on the chat. But let's go through this. The collection, as I see it right now, and we have to discuss that, is a description, a list of the artifacts and some data about that product version. It doesn't contain the actual artifacts, right? So we have some metadata, the product name, version, release date, and the collection object release date, because even though we haven't changed the version, I could find problems with my SBOM. So I update the SBOM, which means I produce a new collection, right? So I wanted to include an enum and clear text on why I updated the collection. The artifact within the collection is also metadata. We could start producing JSON objects out of this. But the way I see it is that, and I'm unsure here, if we have, for instance, an artifact that is an SBOM, we could actually publish that in both CycloneDX and SPDX, for instance, 2 formats, or a document in PDF and text. And I'd like to see that as one artifact with 2 different publication formats. So I have a list of various formats of the same data that one can retrieve and checksums of that, right? So as a user, I would like to see what's changed, right? If I have an API that goes out to vendors and monitor what's going on, if the vendor suddenly changes documents, I would like to be notified. And that's why I see that a T collection is a fixed object at a certain time. And I would very much like to have, but not make it optional to start with, at least, a digital signature on it. But there's always a current one. If I don't ask specifically, I'll get the current one. But I should be able, as a user, to go back and see the differences, see what's happened and why, for full transparency. I know, Pavel, you had some opinions here.
Yes, the way I would personally, like, I fully agree, like, audit trail idea, I fully support that, and I think it makes total sense. However, I personally, I don't think that we should treat collection as a like static object like that. So to me, collection is something, so the vendor should be able to upload the things dynamically. I personally,
Absolutely.
yes, and then.
But that means a new collection then. If you upload something for something already released, I mean, as a customer, I would like to know that you did that. And the only way I can do that is by comparing the 2 different collections.
So real life example, you have a release version, version 2.0.
Yeah.
And then to that release, that version 2.0, you upload, so you upload, say, BOM file, right? So BOM is your artifact. And then on top of that, you have a process to upload VDR file every 2 months or every month. So it means that and this is like routine process. It may be maybe even automated, like fully automated. So the way I see audit trail is I mean, this is now open question if we want to make it in the API spec, is the audit would let you know, okay, so here's this file was so you can see basically every iteration and get the history of every time this file was uploaded. So you get a timestamp and what was uploaded and all.
Yeah, that's what we have here. But I have it in the collection.
Now, if you put extra process, meaning like signature or some manual validation on that, on this thing, Like, to me, that means that there should be, like, we're getting back to, I don't know, committee that looks at it every month and then, okay, this is good and
Nah.
signs.
We
Like, that's too
haven't
much.
we haven't said anything about who signs. The
Yes,
important thing is I have to know that it comes from the right vendor. Chris, hey, and welcome. You have your hand up.
I do, and it's in regard to what Pavel is saying, and it all comes back in my mind to what you mean by a list of versions. Is that versioning system, that monotonic system, related to the product version, or is that just a series of versions of T collections?
I mean, for a single version, like here, if you see the screen, right?
Yeah.
I have a list of collections.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
No, because the version
so
itself is product
for
version.
So
the
the answer to this means I agree with
version.
Pavel or I don't agree with Pavel. Because if version 1 means version 1 of a product,
yeah,
okay, then I totally agree with Pavel that you need to be able to make those dynamic and update them because things change. If the versioning system only relates to the collections and has no relationship to the versioning of the product, then in that case, it doesn't matter because you can just create a new collection and you can make each collection static. That's why I bring this up.
Yep.
No, on that screen, it was related to the product. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah, it's very common, not just for VDRs and stuff, but it's very common to have artifacts released or made available to customers after a given product is released, right?
Oh, yeah.
Most software manufacturers go through some kind of attestation process or something like that. And those always come after a given release. And I don't think changing the ID of a collection makes any sense. I would rather just keep track or have an API that kind of wraps some kind of transparency log and be done with it. I don't want to have different collections for the same version. That doesn't make sense to me.
So Steve, you are saying that versioning number is product version.
Yeah.
No, on that screenshot, it's for sure product version. No. It's because like that's how we saw it on the call. No, you think it's collection version. So, but then
this is the collection version in the way I thought, and all of these apply to the same version.
Right, but why do we have a different UID for them? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that's basically what we're discussing, and I'm of the opinion that we don't need it. Yeah.
No, that may not be needed. So
do we track
what you're
the
saying
version
that
of
we shouldn't change. This text should go. So have the same UID for each T collection.
Yeah.
Because we have a version number. Yeah, absolutely.
So if it is not product versions, if it's T collection versions, then why do we bother to have back versions? Why don't we just have the current version and that's all we have? Because it's not going to relate to a version of the product.
You want to have an audit trail. You want to see the differences.
Why? They don't relate to my product that I'm interested in. So I can't figure out what the relationship is between those T audits versions and what my versions is of my product. So all I really want is the current thing for my product.
I think what would be useful is to step back a little bit, make this as simple as possible, because we want people to adopt this. And as it is today, it's going to be very, very difficult for folks to kind of understand what it is that we're saying and then implement, based on all this stuff. Keeping it as simple as possible and tying into have an API, a dedicated API somewhere that ties into a transparency log and some kind of, and I think we've already talked to the Skit folks about this, what identifier is going to link the two. And that's it. That's all we need. I don't think we need to build versioning into every single one of our APIs though, because I don't think the concept of transparency logs, I don't believe should carry across every single API that we support. That's going to add a lot of complexity to the specification, and of course, the cost to implement that.
That was my point. Yeah, I fully agree with that. And one more thing is, I think so. The skid's trying to answer the question like, do we trust that the information really originates from the vendor? But I believe with this thing, with T, this is really a secondary question, because the vendor is responsible, I mean, either like directly or indirectly, but responsible for maintaining this whole index. And
would be a third party as well, Pavel.
Yeah, it could be a third party, but authorized by the vendor, right? So the vendor.
How would you know?
No. But the vendor, the way how your T index is going to be resolved, the way I understand it, I mean, correct me if it's wrong, but the T index should point squarely to a certain URI that's designated by the vendor. So we have to, like, my understanding again, that this URI is what has to be trusted. And then within the URI, there is less need for all those trust exercises.
No, but trusted there, we can't put all the trust on the web PKI, because that's a broken paradigm. I think that's wrong. We have to be able to have digital signatures on the information published, at least the artifacts.
No, the artifacts for sure. I mean, that's quite common.
Yeah.
But making collection an object, an object that is signed. I mean, a lot of organizations that I know, they have ceremonies to sign things.
Yeah, but the ceremonies are for roots. When you sign software, it's not a ceremony that happens in the CI/CD tool chain.
Not always.
No,
I know.
No, but then they have a poor implementation, I would say. So,
or they have clients that, I mean, that depend. I mean, I can. I mean, that's really. I think that's really.
So that's not the issue here. I mean, the signing can happen in the background automatically. If you have control over your CI/CD tool chain and you have an HSM in there. But the signing can be optional, but I think we have to support a signed collection.
What do we sign precisely? So, for example, the CycloneDX artifacts, do we add their version?
Yep.
Because we could have several VEX statements, documents with the same UI ID that differs by version. So do we add that version there, or?
Yeah, we point to one of the, or do you want to point to multiple VEX versions? Yeah.
So every time a new VEX
at least have the
out,
checks.
we resign the collection.
Yep.
I think that makes implementations way harder.
Yeah, but signing can be optional, but I think we have to be
able to... the point, again, the problem is not signing. Like, I mean, in the nutshell, on the implementation side, I'm thinking implementation side, and that's what Steve said as well. The problem is not really signing. The root problem is whether collection is its own object or it's a dynamic representation of all the artifacts that relate to certain product release, which is what was my understanding all along.
Yeah, I don't see too much value in signing a collection if it's going to be dynamic. You know, what are we signing specifically? And
we're assigning that these artifacts, and one artifact can belong to multiple collections. Remember that these artifacts actually belong to this version of the software.
Right, but this is an API, so I'm thinking at it as not a collection of files. Keep in mind that from an implementation perspective, right, we can't assume that files will actually be things that are stored. So give you some frame of reference, like all the big tech companies, like all of them, Google, Microsoft, even ServiceNow, right? We've been doing SBOMs for well before SBOM was a word, right? And we have all the data. Every single one of these companies has all the data in proprietary platforms that they've built. And these platforms can dynamically generate a list of inventory, including all the provenance and everything else. They're technically not, I mean, they're technically not SBOMs though, but they have all the data. And other companies do this as well. This is especially going to be important for things like VEX or VDR, right? Which changes all the time. So if we want to have use cases that support these really well mature organizations that have all this data, but not necessarily in files, then I don't really see too much value in having a signature on a collection, especially if it's a requirement, because all that data could essentially be dynamic anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I would second that making signing optional would be, I mean, that's basically what CISA recommends as well, because it ups the bar. And hashing a reference, like a hash, kind of solves part of the problem. If it's a dynamic object, right, you probably hopefully know the hash of that, but or you could probably get the hash, which adds some validity to what a man middle or something along those lines. Because I think what's a threat vector, what's attack vector against this? It's probably that, right? It's man middle obfuscating the actual referencing document. So a hash probably gets us pretty close.
Just to be clear, a SHA-384 is a non-keyed hash. It doesn't do attestation. It does integrity only. This does not subscribe to any particular person. If you wish to do attestation, there are other ways of doing digital signatures, including in the DSA, but a SHA-384 is not. It's good for integrity to say, oh yeah, like a checksum or a CRC or something like that.
That's what, in combination with the signature, right? It makes sense to have the hash in there.
But no, the important thing is from implementation perspective, making signing optional doesn't change anything. I mean, if you tell me that I have to support optional signing, that's the same thing that I like from implementation, like from the work I have to do as implementator. That's the same as I have to support mandatory signing. That's easier for business, for vendor, but for me as as somebody who makes implementation of the T, that's same if not more amount of work. Like I think that's an important point. And I personally, like for me, it's much easier, as I mentioned before, to have collection dynamic and sort of not worry about that. And so this proposal, it makes collection an object. So and what Chris saying, yes, so it's a separate end. So we'll have a release and then we'll have a collection on top of that. And for me, it sounds like a huge overkill. Like it's not impossible, it's doable, but it's a large obstacle. And I personally don't see like any big value in that. So I don't know how can we make this decision, but yeah, this is basically where we're at.
I agree.
I agree.
And, supporting, obviously, digital signatures on the artifacts themselves, really, really important. We can debate that, in terms of, is it going to be required? Is it going to be optional? But on the collection, it doesn't,
Okay.
So can we get back to version list and settle on what that is? Because my vote is to keep your collections dynamic and make the version the product version. Because as you come in, you and your organization may have 10,000 of these products, all with an array of different versions.
This is the product or software version, right?
Okay, we're sure. Okay, all right then.
So
I'm in favor of that.
each one of them have a collection.
Cool. Now, if we're going to say that, then let me take this one step further. And don't we need a one that isn't a version that just basically says all? And because there could very potentially be
I think
artifacts that apply to everything.
Someone named Chris said that in last meeting, and
I did. And it wasn't written down. That's why I bring it up again.
I think I wrote a ticket about it, or you did. But anyway, I know that, and I've been pondering over whether that would make the server more complex, or if that is something that is implementation specific. So when I upload an artifact, I can choose that it applies to all collections for 1.2, right? 1.2.x or something. But I don't think it's something, if one version have multiple collection based on regex or something, that would be very, very complex. And I think that's implementation specific. So when you upload, I think I made a slide of that. Let me see. No, not here. So when you upload an artifact, you have to choose. We discussed inclusions and we said, no, that's too complex. I think this is what we discussed with you. You have a T collection for 1.x and then 1.1 and 1.0.
Well, I just meant across the board, as opposed to going through and in every one collection, putting the same artifacts. They're going to be present in every version. Right?
Yeah,
all that
you
redundancy.
could do that. You could do that as well.
It's just another. You could, but it's a lot of redundancy.
Another slide. But this is one example. But I think this would make things a bit more complex, and I think this is an implementation specific thing.
I think this is too complex.
No, I think I understand the need perfectly, but I don't think it affects the model, especially now if we make the collections totally dynamic. I think it's just implementation specific. When you upload an artifact, you have to choose whether this is for 1.2.5 or 1.2. Star or all versions, right? We can document that as part of the publication API we haven't begun working with. But it's certainly much more simple if we make the collection object dynamic fully. Am I wrong, Pavel? Or are you thinking about it?
Like for me, sharing artifacts between collections essentially like serves as a workaround for everything. Like with inclusion collection in the collection, it's sort of same problem for me. Especially with them, yes, as you mentioned, with them being dynamic, there is no control in that case what goes in. So essentially think of collection to release relationship as one-to-one. If you include one into another, it means that in this paradigm, you fully include like one and release into another, like metadata documents for one release into another, which does not make much sense. But
I think it's an attribute when you upload an artifact. Which collections do you want to apply this to?
I agree. And then later on, you can
either wildcard or a very specific version.
Yeah, and maybe you don't even have to fully solve it on the upload step. Maybe we can do something that you can later assign existing artifact to another collection. I think that's fine.
But as far as I see it, it doesn't affect the object model.
Yeah, I can tell you again, this separate, again, I don't know, it's not part of T because this would require like extra entities that I think you don't want. But on like my implementation thinking is have some sort of meta objects. Like let's say take product level and then say upload the art, like product is too big actually, but some grouping of releases. Let's say all releases starting with all 1.x releases.
Yep.
Upload a certain artifact to all of them. I think this can be supported even on T API actually. It's just if you can figure out pattern on the product version.
But that's the published part, right?
Right.
We haven't started really with that, and we should.
Yeah, but from the retrieval part, it's a non-issue absolutely, because as long as your release points to a certain artifact, and yeah, you can have like as many as you like. So from the user perspective, they would just get the same artifact and it's fine. And redundancy wise, you're just copying the identifier to the artifact.
So Pavel has convinced me. I'm going to withdraw my suggestion.
You're gonna get the functionality. But
yeah, I mean, you can obviously it's a workaround, and it just means it's a little more cumbersome to populate these things at some point, but it makes the whole interface simpler. I totally agree.
Okay, then.
Sorry, maybe unrelated, but what's the viewpoint on nested SBOMs or hierarchical SBOMs, for instance? Is that a supported use case? Because I would imagine that if you're doing any kind of real life implementation of SBOMs, having a flat SBOM, well, you could either link multiple SBOMs to a single key collection here, or you could point to one SBOM that has external reference, for instance. Are there any thoughts around that? Because I think that's a pretty important detail in the scheme of things.
Yeah, we kind of don't deal with that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't really deal with that on the API level because SBOM is still an SBOM. Like
right.
when you upload artifact, it's an SBOM. And
okay.
You build it the way you like it, and then you can have internal references to other SBOMs, and that's
okay.
That's a little bit out of scope, I would say.
Okay, fair enough. I just make sure it wasn't blocked by any implementation here. Okay, cool.
This may have come up previously, but I'll throw this out there. How are we doing controls to access the artifact? Are we leaving that up to the source, what we're pointing to? Are we trying to include this in the protocol?
You're discussing authorization.
Authorization to access an artifact, yeah.
We have both. It's implementation specific, but we allowed for an authentication token that will give you authorization to certain, for example, certain products or something.
Okay, cool.
We're going to have to make sure that it supports it down to the artifact level, because if I have a collection, right, I might want the SBOM and the VEX and VDR to be publicly available, but maybe I want my CBOM or my attestation documents to only be available to very specific customers, for example.
Yep. Cool. Noted. Good discussion. We're getting close to the hour. We had a really good discussion and solved some issues in the T collection. I'll try to update the specs based on this. And you may, of course, review the pull request. I would love that, so we get it right. As always, go through the docs, see the changes I made, and open issues if you don't agree. We didn't have time to go through the open API spec. Maybe we can try to focus on that next time, because I think that's a very important step when we now have a better object model. I think with today's discussion, we have accepted most of the work we've done with object model. We just changed a little bit in the collection thinking, but not the content of the collection. So it seems to me like the object model stands, but please review it so we're sure, because that's required input for the API spec. Any other thoughts, issues to discuss before we close? No? Then,
I will make sure the recording is published later today on YouTube.
Great. Later this evening, maybe, for us in Europe. So thank you everyone for participating, and I hope to see all of you, including the newcomers, in 2 weeks. And as always, keep the chat flowing on Slack, follow what happens on GitHub, review the documents we have, and play with my library if you want to learn more about TACE.
Thank you. By the way, I'll miss the one in 2 weeks, but yeah, hope it'll be productive. Yeah, I'll be on vacations.
Then I'll put the signatures back again, Paul.
Yeah, just we need somebody responsible for this not happening.
Okay then.
Okay.
Have a great vacation, Pavel, and
Thank you.
see you all in 2 weeks.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.